Hey, hello, Ben here with you for Studio on the Lake. Hey, per your suggestions, I've went ahead and broken down the beginner wood carving kit basic tools into two sections, a little easier to look at. So this will be the first section on gouges and knives. Got the coffee on? Let's go ahead and get started. Again, this is a basic wood carving set, what you need to get started into carving, and my recommendations. Of course, my opinions are like other people's. Here's an old-timer knife. Kids used to have these in their pocket in the old days. Everybody that was 6 to 10 would carry them to school. I think nowadays that's probably a hanging offense. Show up with a knife in school. Terrible. We had to go that way. You can whittle, do your basic stuff with this. One of the drawbacks to it, of course, is it's folding. It's not a fixed blade. If you don't operate this correctly, it can come back and cut your fingers. But once again, just a basic pocket knife will do the trick. Don't get one that your grandpa used or your uncle used for opening oil cans. Here's a basic bench carving knife. Highly recommended. It's from Ramelson. You can get those from Amazon. I've included links to several of these down below. Here's an old knife I built several years ago, and I've changed the handle many times. I'll do a video on building a carving knife here in the future. So while that's being said, go ahead and subscribe, and you can get those videos and my other videos. Here's a beginner gouge carving set. This is one of 3 that I purchased over the last 30, 35 years. I go ahead and take the finish off of them. This is all that's left from 3 sets. If you don't use them right or treat them poorly, they will break. One of the drawbacks to these is, of course, they roll around. I just threw a $70 Pfeil chisel on there, a Swiss Pfeil. Of course, that tool is $70, and for the same amount of money, you get 6 basic carving tools that'll do the trick. You can see how the handle gets pretty worn from the oils in your hands. You can use it like a pencil grip as a small or a little bit bigger. Here's how they come in this set, and once again I put a link down below. Note there are 3 or 4 versions of these. This is the middle version. Set you back about $62. I'll put more in the description down below as well as the link. High quality tools for beginner tools. You can break them if you try, or even if you don't try. That first one's a large gouge, relatively speaking, for the set, and that's a small gouge. You only need those 2 tools in reality. Here's a skew, just a flat skew. You can use that for setting stop lines. I'll show you that. And here's a veiner. We'll talk about the veiner a little bit more, but some people say that's indispensable. I think personally it's dispensable. I don't use it. Here's about a 60-degree skew that will work just as well as the veiner, and we'll talk about that a little later on. And that's another flat skew with a fish tail on it, meaning that it's not quite flat. You can't really see that there. We'll look at that a little bit more later on. There's the 2 of them. Both of them are pretty much the same profile on the end as far as cutting, but that one has a slight bend in it, and when you're doing flat relief carving, it works pretty good. There's that 60-degree skew with the handle and all the paint removed. Just makes it doesn't slip around in your hand. And once again, you can use it like a pencil or however you like. So if you're looking at purchasing some tools, if you're looking at a spreadsheet that tells you what the shape of it is, this is what it's going to look like. It gives you the width pretty much and the sweep of it. These tools are quite impressive. They come out of the plastic, I guess, for lack of a better reference, and they're just amazingly sharp. They hold an edge pretty well, and it doesn't take a lot of creativity to sharpen them. Those 2 are pretty much the same as the flat skews. Here's the larger gouge. You can do some pretty good damage, and you'll see I'm kind of using it like a pencil, and quite impressive, easy to sharpen. Later on we'll get into actually video 2, talks a little bit about sharpening. But once again, if you're looking to purchase something similar to that gives you the shape and the size, and they come in sizes and sweeps, meaning how deep the curve is. Here's your small gouge, and once again I'm kind of using that like a pencil. If your wood's a little bit harder, you take off smaller pieces, use a smaller gouge. Getting ready to do some detail work, this thing is excellent. Once again, they have several sets on Ramelson, and I put links down below. Don't get the mini carving set, because if you think that one I just had in my hand was small, the mini are really small. Now here's that 60-degree skew, and you can cut a pretty nice V with that. Okay, here's where I start to differ. This is a veiner and has a V shape. Extremely difficult, if not slightly impossible, to sharpen. Does when they're fresh like this, they cut a nice V. People use them for outlining different parts of the carving, especially in relief and flat work. Again, I'm not fond of them. One side of it's always cutting against the grain. If you were to use that 90-degree skew and cut in both directions, you're actually cutting the grain correctly. This one leaves one ragged edge, and I typically don't use them, although I have quite a few of them. Again, a special ed moment here. I kind of got out of frame on this, but I'm just taking a knife, that bench knife, and I'm just scraping off the lacquer finish. I assume it's lacquer, and then I'll take some sandpaper and take it down to bare wood. Looks a little bit nastier, immediately antiques the tool, but the important thing is that it doesn't allow it to flip around in your hand. And once you get to where you're finding that you utilize these tools quite a bit, you can go to something more expensive. Like I said, this tool here is $70 by itself and it'll last you for a lifetime. This one here is an antique tool made in Sheffield, England. I like that. That's one of my favorites. Bought at an antique store for substantially less than the new Pfeils are. Here's a comparison for the size. That's pretty much the same in a grown-up tool as that beginner tool as far as the shape on a gouge. And, well, there's a comparison right there. Almost identical. If you're not carving letters and have a full set of gouges to carve letter shapes or rounds, these will certainly do the trick. You can see these three are relatively interchangeable. This one's a little bit bigger. Again, an antique tool. This one's also made in a firm in Germany. That one below was something that came out. So basically all you need to get started for the first part of this is a knife, pocket knife, or this Ramelson. You notice I shaved up the tip of it a little bit, and I will remove the finish on that some more. And this basic set of 6. I think you're looking at about $62 for the 3 and $20 for the one on the bottom. There it is. We'll talk about mallets and stuff later on. And like I said, add to these one at a time. Don't spend $600 unless you just happen to have that laying around on getting a big set until you figure out which tools you're going to use. Hey, thanks for watching, and as always, please subscribe. Have a good day.